I have this slightly ridiculous little trick for airborne precautions. And honestly, it sounds silly, but it works. Imagine you're watching an old TV. You know those really old TVs with the antenna on top? Now imagine there's a channel called MTV, but there's no cable, no Wi-Fi. This TV is just sitting there with its little antenna catching the MTV signal through the air. And I remember thinking, wait, why am I actually going to remember this? Because the MTV signal is coming through the air, so I can use MTV to remind myself of airborne. Now here's where the little trick gets useful. What's actually on this MTV channel? The M from MTV stands for measles. The T from MTV stands for tuberculosis. And the V from MTV stands for varicella. And these aren't just 3 random diseases that happen to fit the letters. They're classic high-yield infections tested with airborne precautions. So if you see one of them in a question, don't let your brain wander off into 20 different precautions. Just remember the weird little TV, MTV, coming through the air. And suddenly, airborne. But wait, why are these infections actually called airborne? This is the part that's worth understanding. When someone with an airborne infection coughs, sneezes, talks, or breathes, they can release very small infectious particles into the air. These particles are tiny enough to remain suspended in the air, and they can travel beyond the immediate area around the patient. So unlike larger respiratory droplets that settle relatively quickly, airborne particles can hang around in the air, and another person can inhale them later. That's why the word airborne isn't just a label. The transmission is literally happening through infectious particles carried in the air. And honestly, that's exactly why this ridiculous TV picture works so well for me. I see the old antenna. I see the MTV signal floating through the air. And my brain goes, oh, airborne. Then comes the exam part. If it's an airborne infection, think an appropriate fit-tested N95 or higher-level respirator for healthcare personnel, and an airborne infection isolation room, meaning a negative pressure room. So the next time you see measles, tuberculosis, varicella, I want you to picture that old TV. MTV is on, the antenna is catching the signal, and that signal is coming straight through the air. It's silly, I know. But honestly, those are usually the mnemonics that survive exam day.